I thought it might be interesting to visualize what some typical American expenses look like when priced in Silver Eagles. It was a fun exercise, and so I decided to make a video of it. Here is a bunch of stacks of Silver Eagles representing the monthly expenses of owning the median family house in the United States. I should emphasize that the word owning should be in quotes here, because I'm assuming that the owner has taken out a 30-year mortgage. Monthly mortgage interest will cost the owner 46 ounces of silver. The rest of the payment, which will go towards paying down the loan principal, comes out to 9 ounces of silver per month. Yes, it's true that over time more money will go to principal, however the same 55 ounces of silver per month will need to be paid each month for 30 years if you don't want the bank taking the house. Home insurance will be a fairly modest cost, coming in at 3 eagles per month, but we may as well include it. Home maintenance for this size house will cost 19 eagles per month. This cost comes in fits and spurts. In some years, maintenance costs will be much less. In other years, the cost will be much more. Electric, heat, and water will vary from household to household, but for this sized house, where I live, the cost of utilities will be about 17 eagles per month. Now, I didn't include real estate taxes because they are too variable to get a representative number, but where I live, the cost of this house will cost you 15 to 20 eagles per month in real estate taxes. Again, those need to be paid if you don't want a levy put against the house. So when looked at this way, we can see that owning the typical house comes at a very large cost. Cutting costs down in this area can greatly benefit your stack. Ideas I'd throw out there are to buy less house than the bank tells you that you can afford, pay your mortgage down as quickly as possible, and try to minimize the heat and electricity that you waste. Renting is also an option, but whether it will save you money in the long run is anybody's guess. The next biggest expense that the typical American has is a car. The average new car costs about $30,000 according to Consumer Reports. So let's take a look at what it costs the average American to own that average car. Most people don't pay cash for their cars, but either lease or take a 60-month loan. Assume that the loan is taken. The principal payment on the loan will be the equivalent of 19 eagles per month. The interest will be 7 eagles per month. We should also not forget that the average car will become worthless over the course of about 10 years. So for a $30,000 car, we're talking about a monthly depreciation cost of 11 eagles per month. The depreciation will come in the form of periodic maintenance costs plus gradual wearing out of all components. If the car gets 25 miles per gallon, then the average driver putting 12,000 miles per year on the car will spend about 7 eagles per month on gasoline. Insurance will cost another 3 per month. So all total, the cost of owning the average car will be about 2.5 mint tubes of Silver Eagles each month. If that makes you want to throw up, I can't say that I blame you. Having a spouse who drives a new car will double the pain. Given this huge expense, it makes sense to try to cut it down if possible. One of the best things you can do is buy a used car. You don't have to buy a rust bucket, but if you let the previous owner take the first couple of years of depreciation, you can cut your costs significantly. It will be even better if you can save up and pay cash for the car. Together, these two steps can cut your expenses by as much as 30 to 50%. You wouldn't mind having an extra tube of Silver Eagles each month, would you? If you can convince your spouse to do the same thing, you can add still another tube to your stack each month. Generally, there are many other common expenses that aren't optional. Food and clothing are mandatory, and I wouldn't recommend cutting too heavily in those areas. There are a few discretionary areas that are worth looking at though, because if you aren't careful, they can cost you more than you probably think. Here is a list of the discretionary expenses of a typical American household. Eating out can be a fairly expensive habit. The average household spends the equivalent of 9 eagles a month doing so. If you eat out a lot, then your cost will be a lot higher. If you skip eating out altogether, you can add that 9 eagles to your stack each month. Try tracking how much you spend each month eating out. Keep the receipts and tally them up at the end of the month to see how much metal you could have purchased instead. The purchase of TVs, stereos, and other electronics costs the average household 4 eagles per month. This is not a very large expense, but if you can wait a little while longer before upgrading your electronics, it may have an appreciable impact on your stack over time. If you double the time between upgrades, you can add an additional mint roll to your stack each year. Over 25 years, that will be the equivalent of a monster box. There are some other minor expenses such as pets, toys, sports, movies, concerts, and alcohol. The typical household spends 2 eagles per month on each. You may choose that it's just not worth it to cut back in any of these areas. That's fine. Just be aware that over 25 years, those cocktails may cost you a monster box of silver. It might be much more if you like a good scotch, or drink heavily. But just the same, these discretionary expenses are small relative to the costs of home ownership and the costs of cars. So try to cut back in those other areas first. Then try to tackle the larger discretionary items such as eating out. Well, I hope you found this video to be eye-opening. I welcome your comments.